Okay. Good morning. Topic. The topic we're doing today is what's the ideal according to Torah? Should we be working people? Should we be learning people? Should we be a mix of both? There's two parts to the discussion for us Lubavitchers. There's the way Chassidus approaches it, and then there's the way Halacha approaches it. We're going to see at the end that they're not that different. They can't be that different. Chassidus and Nigla are not two separate terrorists. Nigla is just the body of Chassidus. But we're going to go at it from a halachic and Nigla perspective, which has a very interesting development of the way the conversation develops. You have 4 pages of source sheets over here. We're going to start with the Gemara Brachos. If you see in the middle of the daf, Brachos, Lamed Hey and Beis, you have a Tanur Rabbanon. We say by Shema every day, V'asafta deganecha, right? In the paragraph of Hayim Shemaya, would say that if you're going to listen to the word of Hashem, you're going to have a lot of grain and you will collect your grain. Why does the pasuk need to tell me that I could collect my grain? So the Torah answers. The Gemara answers. Because it says, because it says you have to learn day and night, I might have thought you're not allowed to collect your grain. In other words, I might have thought that you're not allowed to work. So Talmud Lemar, I have a heter. In Shema every day, we mention a heter that you're allowed to work and you're allowed to collect your grain. This is Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. Jews have a heter to work. Rashbi, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who is known as Terasa Yomnasa, he says, if people are going to be plowing when they need to plow, planting when they need to plant, reaping their grain when they need to do that, etc., Torah matei aleh. Who's going to be able to learn Torah? Everyone's going to be working. So bisman sheishal oisim retzene shamakim, then they don't need to go collect their grain. When does the pasuk say v'asafta deganecha? That's referring to when we're not doing retzene shamakim. So then we have to work. But it's b'shas hatzchak. Ideally, what should a Jew be doing every day? Just learning. You don't need to work. Other people will do your work for you. Right. It's interesting because in the pasuk it looks like it's part of the bracha, not part of the vidiyah. I'm not sure, but that's what. Yeah. The psukim seem more like Rabbi Yishmael. Who's the halacha like? The Gemara finishes off and says, "Harbe asuk Rabbi Yishmael, but also biyadan." Many people did like Rabbi Yishmael and it worked for them. In other words, many Jews have balanced limud Torah, but have taken breaks in limud Torah in order to work. Many people have tried like Rabbi Akiva and it didn't work. And we see Ma'aser Rav in the Gemara that Rava said at certain times of the year, don't bother me with learning because I have to take care of my business. It seems like from the Gemara that the halachic ideal way that a Jew should live his life is learn, obviously to a degree, but you have a heter to work. Working is mutter, working is not us. Right? We have, if you want to see the first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, almost every parak has a discussion about the topic, about balancing work and learning. You have over here the famous Mishnah, Yafa Talmud Torah in Derech Eretz. Learning with business, it's good to do both. It's good to learn and it's good to work. You need it doing both, keeps you busy enough, you're not going to sin. Any Torah that doesn't have work with it, it will end up just being batal and sinning when you need to leech extra money. So it seems like who's the halacha like? The halacha is like Rabbi Yishmael. A Jew should be working and a Jew should be learning. Look on the other side. What's the framework of that? If you want to see in Shulchan Aruch, an interesting, the second to last source on the page, you have the Mishnah Brura. It says Beis HaKnesses. It's the one after that. Siman Kuf Mem Vav. It says after you go to shul, after you learn a little bit, then you go to work. Because Kol Torah She'eni Malacha Seifa B'Teva B'Gedera Sav in the Pirkei Avos says. However, it doesn't mean your main focus needs to be on work. Again, work is only a heter. Your main focus has to be on your spiritual growth, on your limud Torah. But you have a heter to work, but that's not where your main focus. And we know according to Chassidus, this is also very true. Your mental and emotional energy shouldn't be invested in your work. You have to put in the responsible amount of work, but not with my any amount of emotion invested in it. That has to all be invested in Torah. The Mefarshim over here explain, what's that mean that your malacha should be arai? You should do enough. Make sure that you work till you have enough. Past that, you don't need to invest your extra time. It says on the Sharat Tzion on the bottom, but the Yetzer Hara likes money. The Yetzer Hara is going to tell us that I need to keep working because it's all parnassus. This is all what I need. So how do I know where I should draw the line? Is there a good objective bar I should set? He says over there, Yizbainen, Ilu haya mischayiv lazun es chaverei. Imagine my work The money that I was making from my work wasn't going to me. I had a friend who needed money, so I work every day in order to give him money. When would I say, you know what, I worked enough? It's okay. Whenever you'd say for your friend that, yeah, I worked enough and he'd have enough, then that's a good enough bar for you to know. That doesn't mean you're obviously allowed to get rich. You're allowed to work more than that. But the amount of time you need to invest in order to make that money, that bar should be set what you would do for someone else. A very interesting perspective. Okay, it seems pretty clear, right? That a Jew should be learning and a Jew should be working. However, it's not that simple. We know we have another Mishnah in Pirkei Avos from Rabbi Nechona ben Akana, which says, Kol hamakabel olav ol Torah, anyone that accepts ol Torah, mavir mimenu ol derech eretz. We take away from him the yoke of work, right? The same Pirkei Avos, or parak earlier, which says that Torah is good with derech eretz, says if you're makabel ol Torah, you're not going to need to deal with ol derech eretz. Mashma that it's a good thing to be learning full time, and then you're not going to have to deal with business. But I thought we just said it to halachas like Rabbi Yishmael. Further than that, the Rambam, which is a halacha book, on page 3, in the end of Hilchos Shemitah V'Yovel, we're able to quote this Rambam very often. The last halacha was saying that Shevet Levi had no real estate in Eretz Yisrael. They had no Yerusha for their Shevet because they were the Eibishter's people. And halacha Yud says, "V'lei Shevet Levi b'vad." This is not only for Shevet Levi. Kol ish v'ish, anyone mikol b'yei elam that elevates their spirit and they want to remove themselves from the world and only deal with Hashem, and not deal with the cheshbonos of business as everyone else. That's an elevated life, and Hashem will be his chelik, etc. So on the one hand, we see the halachas like Rabbi Yishmael. However, we have these halachas and mishnahs which seem to say, no, go learn, and business will somehow work itself out. But the Gemara seems to say it's a machlekes and seem to lead us with a Meiser Rav to say that it's better to do business and Torah, not just Torah.
How does it apply with the effect of that they wanted to stay in the
That's more the Chassidus Hashkafa. We'll see at the end, maybe we'll get into that. For now, let's go stick purely with the halachic sources. So to answer this, the Grizz, the famous Brisker Rav, brings one other question in order to answer all of this, and this will be part 1 of what we're discussing. This will culminate part 1, which is at the last Mishnah in Kedushin, on page 2 on the bottom. It talks about different trades people should teach their kids, or what type of life should someone live, what type of business should someone go into. You have over here underlined two opinions. Rabbi Meir says, someone should always teach his kid a trade, a clean and easy trade. Because there's no business that automatically makes money, right? And someone could be a rich tailor, and someone could be for any other profession. A profession doesn't make one rich. The Eibishter makes one rich. So teach your kid a clean, easy job. Seems to fit with what we just had in Pirkei Avos last week from our mayor also. Having mimayit ve'esek v'asek b'Torah, or like we said before, you need to work, but work something that's clean. It doesn't take so much craziness from you, and then your main energy should be in Torah. However, teach your son a trade. In other words, it's a good thing to work. Yav Reb Nahirai. Reb Nahirai argues with Reb Meir. Reb Nahirai says, "Maniachani kolu mani yeshiva. I'm not going to work. I'm not going to teach work at all. I'm only going to teach my son Torah." So we have over here machlekes Reb Meir and Nahirai, right? The mayor says, teach your son a clean, pure, easy job. Nahirai says, don't teach a job. Teach your son Torah. The problem is, the Gemara in Eruvin says, who was Reb Nahirai? Reb Nahirai was Reb Meir. His real name was Reb Nahirai. Why was he called Reb Meir? Because he was Meir Einei Chaver of Bahalacha. He was the smartest man in his generation. No one could reach his depth. But Reb Nahirai was Reb Meir. So we have over here in Masechtas Kedushin, we have Reb Meir arguing with Reb Nahirai. That sounds like right, the same person arguing with himself. Huh? Skipping that. We did that topic a couple months ago, right? Mental health opportunity. So says the Grizz, if you follow all these patterns, this is what's going to come out. The Gemara never says halachas like Rabbi Yishmael, that a Jew has to work and has to learn. It says many try like Rabbi Yishmael, and that usually works. Many try like Rashbi, and that usually doesn't work. In other words, what's the derech hamitzua? If I'm going to write a law book for the average Jew and say, what should he be doing? The average Jew should be working and learning. More than that doesn't really work. It's not realistic. Even learning that much time is not going to go for them. It's going to be loizachu. They're going to need to say for betela v'gereres avay. However, that doesn't mean that doesn't make it usher to learn all day, right? If someone has the capability and has the kishorness and willpower, like the Rambam says, Rambam doesn't say everyone should be like Shevet Levi and just not deal with the world. It says anyone that nadva ruchai, that elevates himself and wants to live like that, it's a good thing. Let's call it a mitzvah min amuvkar, but not necessarily the straight halacha. So too in Pirkei Avos, right? What's the regular? The regular is Yafa Talmud Torah in Derech Eretz. However, Kol HaMakabel Olav Al Torah. You don't have to, but if one decides to be Makabel Olav Al Torah, then he doesn't have to deal with Al Derech Eretz. It's another way of living the system. It's not the average, but it's definitely praiseworthy if someone could handle it realistically. Which is why Reb Nahirai and Reb Meir aren't arguing with each other, right? What's Reb Meir talking to? He's talking to the public. One shall teach his son a trade. Why? Because I'm speaking generally, Jews are going to need to balance Torah and work. However, Reb Nahirai is talking about himself. Again, Reb Nahirai was his real name. I'm not going to deal with trade. I'm going to teach my son only Torah. It's a difference of if this is a personal decision you're making versus what we're going to teach the general public. And that's seemingly the nigla hachra about what's the way we're approaching life. What's the ideal? There's the average ideal, but then there's, let's say, the min hamufchar, or what considered is a more elevated way of life. So you choose, and if it's realistic to do. Any questions before we move to part 2? It's not a problem. It's halachic. That's completely api shochanach. Okay. Huh? Doesn't seem like it's frowned upon. If someone's you have like Yosef Atzadik, right? Who he asked the butler to, when he gets out of prison, to have him in mind, and he was punished for it. Why? You have to make a keli in teva, right? But if he had an extra chush of bitachon, he had a frequency with the Eibishter above regular teva, then for him to go do that was considered below his grade. So if someone's able to be matzliach in limud and then just decides to cut himself short, then is it usher? It's not usher, but that would probably be frowned upon. Someone needs to fetch themselves in order to do it, and theoretically it's possible, but it seems to be the shlichus in life seems to be more down the middle. Then that is 100% okay.
Isn't clear though? There's a famous story of Rashbi. He came out of the cave.
Yeah.
And his son, they saw the people working in the field, and he worked the field. The Amish sent him back to the cave and said, "You're wrong." So you see from the story that Rashbi's there, maybe for 1 or 2, special BMG color people, but for the rest of the world.
Okay, what was wrong? What was wrong was saying people shouldn't deal with the world. That's wrong. To kill people who are working, that's wrong. But theoretically, for someone to make the decision to be elevated, that's still okay. It's for sure okay, and it's elevated. To go see people that are working and judging them for that way of life, that is completely halachically acceptable. Yeah.
So the only thing wrong was that the Rashbi worked down their field.
The Rashbi's son, yeah.
The Rashbi's son.
Yeah.
But the whole working concept was fine. Also,
it's fine. That doesn't mean Rashbi, when he says that there's a way of living life elevated, that doesn't mean that that's wrong either. That's just you can't demand that of people. That's someone, if they're able to do that, then you. What's it you demand? I mean, the based in the city put him in Chayrim? When he's making his own cheshbon nefesh, he's not mechuyev to make that decision. Again, we're going to bring in the chassidus aspect of people living out their tafkid of what they're created for, but al pi halacha, if he's financially able to and he has parents supported, let's see, some other factors might make a difference. Yeah.
Are there any professions that are known to be creative and they're okay for the whole head with like researchers or who knows? Even teaching, the teacher that doesn't prepare lessons things really can and schools expect at least as much time.
So something that has the holy benefits that you're allowed to probably spend more energy into, but that doesn't absolve you from your own chiyuv of limud Torah, and your own chiyuv also at least has to be an ikr in your life.
Right. But
nothing just says, huh?
A person can, someone does a startup company,
yeah,
whatever, whether it's a market or a store or some, I don't know, house, whatever. They can put the whole energy into it. They can think about it night and day.
It shouldn't be. According to Torah, they shouldn't be.
What?
According to Torah, they shouldn't be. There's a certain amount of time that you should be dedicating to it.
It doesn't work on time.
If you're a disciplined person, it could. It could. And even mental energy, there's practical mental energy, and then there's mental emotional energy. That's what. Okay. Step 2 is about, usually if you need to learn all day, these days, you get supported by other people. That opens up a very interesting and aggressive machlokes between the Rambam and others. If you look on the last page, on page 4, you have 2 halachas over there regarding one who is involved in ruchnius and fundraises or lives off of other people in order to do his ruchnius. Famous discussion till these days. Halacha Yud, Kol HaMesim Al Libay Sheyasik B'Torah V'Lo Yaseh Malacha V'Yisparnas Min HaTzedakah. Anyone that says that he's going to just learn Torah, I'm not going to do any work. I'm going to be Misparnas Min HaTzedakah. Harei Zeh Chilul Es Hashem. It's a complete Chilul Hashem. Ubiza Es HaTorah. You're embarrassing the Torah. V'Kava Mar Hadas. You're extinguishing the light of the religion. V'Garam Ra La'atzmai V'Nat L'Chayev V'Naylam Haba. I don't think the Rambam could say it more sharp than that. If one is just involved in ruchnius and being supported by other people, it's not looked up towards. It quotes other sources in Halacha Yud Aleph. It says, it's a big mila for someone, even if you're involved in ruchnius, to at least have your own source of parnasa, not to be supported by other people. Which raises the question, on the other, and it's a good thing to be learning all day. What happens if finance? What about the finance question about the fact that we need to be supported by other people often, or the shluchim being supported by community? Right, the Rambam seems to write very, very sharp against this. Which who picked up the question on the Rambam himself seems to contradict himself.
Rambam himself was supported by his brother.
Okay, that's a historical question. I don't know. There was in the Rambam himself. Which Rambam did we just read before? Huh? Yeah. I'll say he was a doctor. Oh yeah, this is before.
That's right. Yeah. By the way, that's what he's looking at.
Hold on. What did the Rambam say before? It's good to live like Shevet Levi, no? You guys remember this Rambam? We said at the end of Hilchos Shmita. It's good to live removed from Olam Hazeh and just to be learning all day. So is the Rambam contradicting himself? Huh? No, the Rambam over here is a halacha book. He says it's a good thing if you decide to just be involved in ruchnius. Then he says don't just be involved in ruchnius. Don't be supported by the community. So the Mefarshim explain the ideal way. They say, Rabbi Prescott, they say that Chaim Kanievsky used to sell eggs once a day or something, right? Heard this? No, I heard that he used to sell eggs and people would buy it because it's little eggs like that. In other words, you could be completely involved in ruchnius. However, something, at least basic support, you should try to give yourself. That's what's considered the elevated. Huh? Right? Okay. Something. When the Rambam's talking about Hilchos Shmita, be like Shevet Levi, he doesn't mean completely support by other people. That's the Rambam shuns the topics. Right. They had a certain thing, I think. There was one thing they left for the Rav in order to be the one to sell. Yeah. However, I didn't quote the sources, but the most poskim argue on the Rambam, namely the Tashbatz was late Rishon / early Achron, one in that vague period. And he writes the Rambam wrote sharp, he wrote much sharper against the Rambam. Said the Rambam's a sefer everyone has, so just they're going to start learning from his mistakes more than they learn from his pluses. The Rambam, because he was so angry, because he was so angry, he made a mistake. Easy for the Rambam to talk, to say that you don't need a job, you need a job while you're learning. Because the Rambam, the Mazel helped him, he was close to the Sultan and he was a good doctor. What about all the other Rabbanim that are sitting and learning? Does he want them to die from a hunger? And if you're going to tell these guys to stop learning for some time in order to get a job, then Torah Matei Allah. So the Tashbatz says that it is a better thing, ideally, if you could balance at least some side job for yourself and mainly focus on Torah, but it's 100% mutter, and the Rambam, just as sharp as the Rambam wrote, he wrote just as sharp back.
Why not? If someone wants to learn Torah all day, but also is for us to become a Rebbe in Yeshiva.
Right, or stuff like that. That's a separate discussion. Teaching Torah is going to overlap a little bit, but it's a separate discussion.
How can anyone ever be a Rebbe in Yeshiva?
It's a side discussion. It has its own. The Alter Rebbe discusses it. It's a side discussion.
Anything like administrative duties only, or
Huh? So that's also a side discussion. Maybe we'll get to this. Okay. Shh. What are we holding? Oh, the Bach says, Rambam, not only is this an ideological discussion that you were wrong, but there's two sources of Gemara. There are many sources in Gemara that seem to prove that this was okay to do. I'll name two of them. We have in Saita Daf Mem Rabbi Bahu. It quotes his humility. A story with his wife and someone else's wife, and the other wife was telling him that my husband, he's masharis for your husband, just to covet for him, but he can learn much better than him. His wife came up and said, "You know what that guy's wife told you?" And he said, "Don't worry." He was mavatar on his covet. They wanted to make him the Rav of the city, but he knew that someone else needed money. So he said, "Don't make me the Rav of the city, make him the Rav of the city." Mashma, being the Rav of the city gets you money, right? And another story, the story of Rabbi Yechanan and Ilfa, they needed money. They said that they had to stop learning, they had to stop working. They were sat under a weak wall one time. Two malachim came, they were going to collapse the wall on them and kill them for being mavatzah from learning. One of them said, "No, don't do it." One of them is going to become a big Rav, big God of B'Torah. Rabbi Yechanan heard this conversation of the malachim. Ilfa didn't, so he said he figured it would be him. He said, "I'm going to go back to poverty. You work, I'm going back to poverty." He ended up becoming the Rav. When Ilfa went back, he saw Rabbi Yechanan and he said, "Listen, if you weren't working, you could have gotten that job also." In other words, it seemed to be mashma that teaching Torah and being a Rav did make some money from the community. The Bach says you could even become rich on it. Not if you're a standard guy. You could live off of it in a kollel, but to an appropriate degree. To get rich off of it, you have to be like the leader of the city or the leader of the community.
What about these children that end up getting into side gigs and happiness?
It's a good thing.
Real estate and
if it's distracting you from your shlichus, then it's not a good thing. But to have it a little bit on the side is even more meshubach than living off of the community. It's a better thing to do.
I don't need so into children. There's no way.
So that leads to one last part of the conversation.
There's no way that these children that are invested in 25 buildings that they're not focused on real estate. As much as they claim not.
So there's obviously a bar, but what about if they have a couple? What about if they have a couple? What about if they have a couple investments and it's making something for them, and mainly they're focusing on the shlichus? That's even more mashubach than. That's like selling the salt or selling the eggs.
That's exactly it. I'm not attacking them. I'm just saying there's no way it doesn't distract.
If it's to that degree, maybe. I'm saying this is the objective line. If it fits within that line, great. If it's something above that, then you distract them from your shlichus, and it's just at that point you're working. You might as well have someone else involved in the shlichus. All right.
I want to know how to say
Right? Yeah, I'm focusing mainly on the English aspect, but I said that they overlap. They're not a stira, and obviously they work together. There's one other aspect to the conversation. We'll finish with that. There's a third chilek to the conversation, but we'll do it for a different time. Which is the poskim say these days that even the Rambam might agree, because Eis Lasei Sla Hashem Echeir Teresechel, which is for sure a big heter for shluchim, right? That because the generation has become lower, and if you don't have anyone involved full time in learning, you had all Crown Heights Rabbanim that were doing half the time real estate or shops in Crown Heights, etc. Then you'd have no one. Or shluchim for sure. If no one's involved in the city to be the spiritual leader, then there'd be no shaykhs to Yiddishkeit. So for sure that would be a heter. And they say even the Rambam might agree, even after his sharp lashonis, if it's the case of Eis Lasei Hashem Echeir Teresechel, and that would be the heter for both kollel and the financial side of it, and the for shluchim also would be the same conversation. The last part of the conversation, just to open up, would be limudei chol. And does this mean we should be learning? Or Meir says to learn a trade. Everyone says you also have your main chiyuv of teaching your kid is limud Torah. In fact, the Gemara in Kedushin says the 6 chiyuvim that a father has for his son: give him a bris, give him a pidyon haben if he's the firstborn, teach him to learn Torah, get him married, teach him a trade. Some say teach him how to swim. Say the Mefarshim, I don't remember who exactly, that the order is the order of life, right? So you have brises first, then you have pidyon haben. Then 5-6 years old, your chiyuv of Talmud Torah a little bit before that already starts. Then you have the chiyuv of getting them married. Then you have a chiyuv of teaching them the trade. You have a chiyuv of teaching them how to learn as long as you have some grasp on them, which is until their lower 20s, or a certain amount of Torah they need to learn, which is a lot, right? Tanakh, Mishnah, Gemara, all of it, etc. So those years of the life until marriage time is when it's meant to be fully invested in Torah, but for ruchnistic reasons and for halachic reasons too. And Rameir says, teach them a umanus nakia v'kala. I think Rav Moshe says that means something that doesn't involve so many years of college, something that doesn't involve too many people. They don't need to find their set. Someone wrote to Rav Moshe that they wanted to have satisfaction from their life, and they felt satisfaction would be if I become a doctor. He says, what's the connection of satisfaction from life, from your trade? You need to make money and you need to have a satisfied life. You find satisfaction from your ruchnius. The trade doesn't have to be something so sophisticated necessarily. And even if yes, it could be for later in life, but this doesn't touch limud al taras hakodesh or limud al Torah for the younger years at all. Okay, this would be the way of balancing the basic parts of the conversation. Al pi nigla, al pi chassidus. We know also the Rebbe did push for those that could learn and could be involved in Kodesh full time to be involved in Kodesh. However, businessmen are looked at no lower, and for carrots there's a certain mila of the Tachtonim that they have, or seeing hashkacha pratis that they have that those involved in Kodesh full time don't have. You need the full body of Judaism. No one is greater, no one is worse, because they're both important, and each one needs to be mashal each other.